Kakalosh Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. We're going to be continuing on Daf Kaftet Amud Aleph 29.1. Okay, we're just going to start though on Kafchet Amud Bet on the bottom 28b, where it says a few lines up, where it says Mani Matniti. After we were trying to go back and forth, we are now going to try to find out who is the author of our Mishnah that they permitted chametz of a goy, which was Shavar Alav Pesach, which means that if it already passed Pesach and the chametz belonged to a goy, it's going to be permitted. However, though chametz Shavar Alav Pesach, which means chametz that was already past Pesach and it belonged to a Jew, you're not allowed to have it. It's a sur. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, if you're going to tell me Rabbi Yehuda, chametz stama kama. He said stam chametz, that means chametz Shavar Alav Pesach, chametz that Pesach passed on it, which means that it passed over and it was chametz. Stam, he said that you're not allowed to benefit from it. Afilu denochli, even if it belonged to a goy. Rabbi Shimon, if it's going to be Rabbi Shimon, now we're starting on 29.1 on the top. Rabbi Shimon, he said nami misha kashari. He said it's going to be permitted even if it belonged to a Jew, right? Now, if you're going to tell me it's Rabbi Yosef Galilei, right, you can't say that either. Because afilu toch smano nami misha kashari bana. He permits it even bana toch smano, which means that you're allowed to even benefit from it. Which means if you have chametz of a Jew, it's mutar bana, you're allowed to benefit from it even after the Pesach. So it comes out that our Mishnah is not like either or. We have three different people, right, that you could choose from. Rabbi Yosef Galilei, we have Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yehuda. Our Mishnah cannot be like no one. So who's our Mishnah then? It has to be somebody. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, says Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Leolam Rabbi Yehuda. It has to be Rabbi Yehuda. That he says the chametz shavar of Pesach is a sur min Torah, which means it's biblically prohibited to have chametz that passed the Pesach on it, and it was in the person's possessions, right? So he says v'yaliv. Now, even though he comes and he says that it's going to be a sur, he says the reason why was he's going to learn it v'yaliv seor dachila mi seor dereya, which means he learns the isur from seor. Seor is leaven, something which makes it the starter, right? So it says that this is talking about the Yisur of Achila to the Seor by Re'iyah. Re'iyah means to see it. Remember, you're not allowed to see it or find it. And then there's the concept of eating it. So he comes and he says like this, Mas Seor de Re'iyah, just like the Seor of seeing it. Shelcha means it has to be yours. You're not allowed to see it. But you are allowed to see other people's, and you're allowed to see of Hekdesh, which Gavoa means above, right? The one of Kadosh Baruch Hu, so it's Hekdesh. Af seor da'achila, so too seor of achila. Shelcha iyataroeh, right? So too, you cannot come and see yours. Aval ata ochel shel acherim v'shel Gavoa, but you're allowed to eat others and of Gavoa. Uvedinu di'ibay lelemitre dafilu b'achila mishari. So technically, mitzad the din, it should have permitted even a chametz of a goy that you're allowed to eat it, even ba'achila, right? That means it's not only just in benefiting, you're allowed to even eat it. But that which it told you that a Jew you're not allowed to benefit. So we learned that by a goy you are allowed to benefit, but be'emet you're not only allowed to benefit, but you're allowed to even eat it. Meaning
after Pesach.
Yes, obviously after Pesach. So you're never allowed to eat chametz. So we're talking about after Pesach. That means one more time. You're allowed to really even eat chametz shavar alav Pesach. Chametz shavar alav Pesach means chametz a Pesach passed over it of a goy. But in our Mishnah, we only talked about benefiting. Why do we only speak about benefiting? Because since we said that by a Jew, it's a surbana, so we said by a goy, it's mutar bana. You're allowed to benefit, but really be'emet, it's mutar ba'achila even. You're allowed even to eat it. Not only bana, it was derech agav. It was by the way that since you already mentioned one thing, it mentioned the other thing. Uvedinu di'ibay le'mitzre, and the Medina also, it should have said, even within the proper time, the chametz of a goy is also mutar bana. The ivy, the tana, and that which we learned that the Israel achar zmano. Why do we come and we speak about Israel after the proper time? So therefore we talked about nochri achar zmano, but really be'emet nochri even toch zmano. Even within the time, you're also allowed to benefit from it because it's not yours. Once it's not yours, there's no problem. So that's the first answer of Rav Acha bar Yaakov, that the author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Yehuda. For everybody that just joined, we're in the top of Kaftet, right? We're in Rav Amar and 29a. It's still A1. Okay, Rav Amar. So now the second answer. Okay, Rava comes and he says that it's not going to be really Rabbi Yehuda. Leolam Rabbi Shimon he. Really, be'emet, it's Shitat Rabbi Shimon. Now remember, why do we say that it cannot be Rabbi Shimon? We said it cannot be the Rabbi Shimon, right? We said that even for a Jew, it should have been permitted, which means that even chametz she'avar alav Pesach that belongs to a Jew should be permitted according to Rabbi Shimon. So says Rabbi Shimon. So why does it say in our Mishnah that it's a sur? Knasa kanis, right? It's a knas, it's a penalty, it's a fine. Hoil ve'avar alav be'isur bal yireh, says since he already transgressed sayavera of bal yireh bal yematzeh, which means you're not allowed to find it, you're not allowed to see it. So because of that, that's why we said that it's going to become a sur, it's a knas. You're not allowed to benefit from it, even though technically mitzad the din, it should have been permitted to benefit. Yeah. Well, you could have be able to benefit from it, but now we come and we say that it's going to be permitted. It's going to be prohibited. Sorry, because of the knas. Okay. So now says the Gemara, Bishlem al Rava. It's good according to Rava. Hainu diktani. That's why we come and we say Shel Yisrael is asur mishum shenemar lo yireh. Now we understand it means like this. There were two different answers. Rav Acha bar Yaakov that said that the Mishnah is like Rabbi Yehuda, and Rava that says that the Mishnah is like Rabbi Shimon. So now says the Gemara, it's good according to Rava that he says that we're talking about the chametz she'avar of Pesach is only going to be asur midrabanan because of a knas. That's why we came and we learned in the Mishnah the chametz she'avar of Pesach of a Jew is asur benah. Why? Because it says in the pasuk lo yireh. Which means, which is bal yireh bal mitzvah, but that's why it's a knas. Not that it's doraita, but we learn it from bal yireh bal mitzvah because of a knas. But according to Rav Acha bar Yaakov, that he learns it, it's a mitzvah doraita, mishum lo yachel chametz mibayle. It's not because of bal yireh bal mitzvah. It has nothing to do with seeing it or finding it. It's you're not allowed to eat the chametz. So this is you're not allowed to eat the chametz, which is a bar of Pesach. It belongs to a Jew. Which means, if you're going to tell me because of lo yireh, it wasn't trying to tell you that it was a yisur doraita bal yireh bal mitzvah, it's already afterwards. But it's talking about that because of bal yireh bal mitzvah that you were over, so you're not allowed to eat it afterwards, right? Why? Because of a knas. But if you're going to tell me that it's because of Rav Acha bar Yaakov, because it's shitat of Yehuda, which is a biblical prohibition to come and to eat this chametz she'avar alav Pesach, so he should have just said lo yachel chametz. That's the reason for the yisur. So says the Gemara, answers the Gemara, misavrat ha-seifa kai? Do you think that the Mishnah is coming and bringing this halakha to do with the seifa? Right? On this halakha that it's on the reisha. Vehachi kamer. This is what it means to say. Right? Remember that in the Mishnah you had a reisha and a seifa. Right. The reisha says like this. Chametz shenochli she'avar alav pesach mutar bana. So imagine, you've got chametz of a goy that already Pesach passed by and you have the chametz of a goy, you're allowed to benefit from it. Mishum shenemar lo yeleh lecha. You're not allowed to see yours. But you're allowed to see the goys. Shelcha yataroeh, aval ataroeh shel achirim shel gavoah. But you're allowed to see other people's end of the ekdesh. V'yaliv seor de achila mi seor de riyah, and we're going to learn seor of eating from the seor of seeing, of looking at it, of finding it. Ve'azu l'tamai, when each one goes according to his reasoning, which means like this: Rav Acha bar Yaakov and Rava, both of them go according to the reasoning. Each one was stated. Ha'ochel seor shel nochri. According to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, what happens if you came and you ate chametz she'avar alav Pesach of a goy? So imagine right now you go to Publix, and let's pretend that there's not all the questions that maybe there's Jewish owners or shareholders. Right. Let's pretend it's 100% goy. Yeah, 100% goy. You go to Publix right after Pesach, and you're going to buy chametz and you're going to eat it. So now, if you're going to eat it, what's the Shitat Rabbi Yehuda? What is it exactly? So Rava says, loke. Rava says, according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, you get makot. Right? But Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, eno loke. You don't get a makot. Why? Let's explain the machloket. Rava says you get makot, lo yalif Rabbi Yehuda seor de achila misor de riyah. Because according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, in Rava, he does not learn seor achila from seor of riyah. And therefore, since you don't learn the seor of achila from seor de riyah, just like you're not allowed to come and you're not allowed to eat it after the Pesach, just like you're not allowed to find it, right, on Pesach in itself. And therefore, it says here in the footnote, right, you're not allowed to eat it, because that's where Rabbi Yehuda learns that you're not allowed to have chametz she'avar alav Pesach. He learns it from you're not allowed to eat the chametz, so you're not allowed. So therefore, if you don't learn seor of achila from seor of riyah, what comes out that you're not allowed, that means there's no difference between the goy or the Jew, right, because that was the seor of riyah, made a differentiation between the Jew and the non-Jew, right? Remember, seor of riyah means you're not allowed to see it. So we said you're not allowed to see your own, but you're allowed to see others. So if we don't learn achila from riyah, there's no difference between a goy and a Jew. Goy and a Jew is the exact same. So if goy and a Jew is the exact same, just like you're not allowed to benefit from a Jew's chametz after the Pesach. So too, you're not allowed to benefit from a goy's chametz after Pesach. So according to him, you get lashes. But Rav Acha bar Yaakov says you don't get lashes. Why? Because he holds in Rabbi Yehuda, Yalif Seor Da'achila Misor D'Riyah. You do learn Seor of Achila from Seor of Riyah. So it comes out that the chametz of a goy was never included in the Yisur of chametz shavar of a Pesach from Rabbi Yehuda, which means, one more time, Rabbi Yehuda learns from Lo Yachel Chametz, that you're not allowed to eat chametz. That's chametz shavar of a Pesach that comes from the Torah, biblical. It comes from the Torah. You're not allowed to benefit from the chametz shavar of a Pesach, but that's only talking about a Jew. Now there's a machloket. Is it a Jew or even of a goy? So if you learn Seor of Achila, which is the Lo Yachel Chametz, from Seor of Re'iyah, so therefore, if you learn it, so therefore it only applies to a Jew, not to a goy. Why? Just like the Seor of Re'iyah is only applies to a Jew and not to a goy, because Lo Yerelecha Seor, you're not allowed to see your own Seor, but you are allowed to see of a goy. So then you're allowed also to eat Chametz Shavar of Pesach of a goy, because I learned them both together. So therefore, Seor of Achila I learned from Seor of Re'iyah, and you're allowed to benefit from the goy's Chametz. And therefore, according to Rav Acha bar Yaakov, you don't get lashes if you eat it.
That's
but
the way we pass.
Yes, but if it's going to be, obviously that's the way in Pesachim, because we know that you could go right after Pesach and you're allowed to buy from Publix. Yeah, and however, though, if you're going to learn like Rava in Rabbi Yehuda, so then it would actually be a problem, because since you don't learn Sort of Achila from Sort of Riyah, so therefore, which means that the Goy and the Jew is the same. So just like you're not allowed to benefit from a Jew's Chametz after Pesach, so you're not allowed to benefit from a Goy's Chametz after Pesach.
I mean, forever? I mean, it doesn't make sense until he gets a new stock.
Again, I guess until it passes the 30 days. And then you already have a thing that it's probably a new, it was a turnover. So now it's probably going to be permitted. Right? But that's what we do by a Jew even. Correct? By a Jew, right? We say after 30 days, you're allowed to. So we wait the 30 days and then you're allowed to benefit from a Jew even though he had Chametz Shavar.
New production.
Yeah. Okay? Fine. So says the Gemara, Tehadar ben Rav Acha bar Yaakov me'ahi. Rav Acha bar Yaakov, he actually retracted from this svara, right, of Rabbi Yehuda, that he says that he doesn't, that Rabbi Yehuda does not prohibit chametz shavar of Pesach of a goy. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braita, ha'ochel chametz shel ekdesh b'moed. If somebody is going to eat chametz of ekdesh during Pesach, ma'al, there's me'ilah. V'yeshomrim lo ma'al. Some people say there's no me'ilah, which means like this, right? This is obviously talking about beshogeg. Okay, so if somebody by accident, right, accidentally
not allowed to eat ekdesh.
Right, exactly. So that's why there's milah. Milah means you're benefiting from ekdesh. Remember, milah means I'm not allowed to benefit from ekdesh. So if I benefit from ekdesh, I have to bring a korban milah, right, which is called asham meilot, and I have to also pay back the principal of meaning the value of the actual whatever that I ate, plus an additional fifth. Okay, that's the concept. Now, obviously, here we're talking about also you did it by accident. So obviously, there's no karet and all these things. It was by accident. Okay, so now what's happening here is, we're talking about chametz, for example, bread, which they consecrated it. So therefore it belongs to Ekdesh. Comes somebody and he eats it on Pesach. So now there's a whole machloket. Are you chayav a korban milah, or also paying back the fifth and everything, or not? So now...
Rabbi, it says here in the note that there's no penalty according to Rashi.
According to Rashi. Well, that's a machloket here. 1 minute. So now like this. It says over here, En adam nechshav kemoel, unless he actually took away something which was a shaveh pruta. Okay, that means basically, if you're going to benefit from ekdesh less than a shaveh pruta, which means less than a certain amount, so there's nothing, as if you didn't do anything. There's no penalty. Okay, so he says whether it's according to Rabbi Shimon or according to Yehuda, but you're not allowed to benefit from chametz on Pesach. Now, what happens is that on Pesach there's no value to chametz, because at the end of the day it's nothing. You're not allowed to do anything with it, so there's no value to it. So if you ate it, you didn't actually make it lack anything, because you can't even redeem it, you can't do anything. So therefore, the Gemara is going to explain. So then, why is it according to Tanakama that bemet is considered milah? It should be considered nothing, because at the end of the day, it's worthless. So if you benefited something which is basically worthless from ekdesh, there's nothing here. So says the Gemara like this.
So how you dispose from ekdesh that is left on chametz?
How do you dispose of ekdesh of chametz? That's a very good question. Chametz, which is of ekdesh. What would you be able to do with it? You would probably burn it, even though I'm not sure. I don't want to say something that I'm not sure. I don't know. It could be. It could be that you would have to burn it. I'm not sure. Okay? Okay, fine. You're still on.
Yeah, I'm on. I know.
Oh, okay, very good.
I was listening.
Okay, very good. So he says like this. So says the Gemara, man yesh omrim. Who is the yesh omrim? Which means like this. Remember, there was a stam and yesh. Stam v'yel shalacha kestam. No, but here it's in the Gemara. Yeah. So here it says there's a stam v'yesh. The Braita says stam. Ha'ochel chametz v'ekdesh b'mued. It's milah, and we have to understand who that is. Then it says yesh omrim. Some people say it's not milah. Who is the yesh omrim? Okay, so I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, so Rabbi Yochanan ben Akana.
They're going to cite 5 interpretations of this dispute.
Yes, 5. So keep counting, yeah, Richard. The Tanya was learned in the Braita. Rabbi Yochanan ben Akana sayed et Yom Kippurim ki Shabbat letashlumin. Rabbi Yochanan ben Akana used to make Kippur like Shabbat to do with tashlumin, which means if somebody does melacha on Kippur, it's like he did melacha on Shabbat to do with the tashlumim, right? During the time of the melacha. What does that mean? If somebody's mechalel Shabbat and they did a melacha, so what happens? He's going to be chayav mita, but he's exempt from the tashlumim. He's exempt from paying money. So, for example, let's say he did an action that he obligated to pay back a friend money because he damaged something, but he was mechalel Shabbat at the same time. So he gets the death penalty of being mechalel Shabbat, but he doesn't pay back. He's patur from tashlumim. So too Kippur is the exact same thing. If somebody was mechalel Kippur, and he obligated himself in money by being Mechalel Kippur, he's mitchayev benafsho, he gets karet. Because remember, Kippur is not like Shabbat. The majority of people in the world, you ask them, what's more stringent, Kippur or Shabbat? Majority, 90% of people, right, are going to tell you Kippur. 90%.
Accepted.
Which one?
Present company accepted.
Present company accepted. Yeah, he already also said the same thing. 90% of people. Baruch Hashem, there are 10% of the world that they learn Daf Yomi, and they know that it's incorrect. What's more stringent? Shabbat. Because Shabbat has sekilah. The arba mitot betin, the 4 mitot betin, the 4 death penalties of betin are more stringent than karet. So therefore, if somebody's mechalel Shabbat, they get sekilah. That's more stringent than karet and kippur. Okay? And that's the reason, if you remember, we brought down that on Shabbat there are 7 aliyot, and kippur there's only 6 aliyot. On Yom Tov there's only 5 aliyot, because if somebody's mechalel Shabbat, right, they get sekilah. If somebody's mechalel Kippur, they get karet. Right. If somebody's mechalel Yom Tov, it's a lav. They get lashes. It's a negative commandment, but it's not karet. So because of that, every time that it goes lower in level, so too you get less aliyot. So you got 7, 6, and 5. Chol HaMoed that you're allowed to do melacha, but there is musaf, you do 4. Or right? That's why in Chol HaMoed it's always 4 aliyot. If there's no musaf, 3. So that's why Purim, Chanukah, there's no musaf. All these years there's no musaf, you have 3 aliyot. That's also the order of stringencies, okay? So it says here, the exact same halacha applies to Kippur. If somebody's mechalel Kippur, and at the same time they're obligated to pay money, he gets karet, and he is exempt from tashlumin. So if so, it comes out that if somebody's going to come and he's going to eat chametz of Ekdesh, he's going to be patur of milah. Why? If somebody eats chametz on Pesach, what's halacha? Karet. Somebody eats chametz on Pesach, they get karet, they get cut off. So if somebody gets cut off, he's exempt of paying any money. So according to that, that's why it makes sense. There's no milah. So therefore, the first opinion is who's the yeshomrim? The Kippur and Shabbat are the same to do with karet, which means that if somebody gets a death penalty, whether it's of karet or sekilah, they're exempt from monetary compensation. It's the same thing. If somebody's going to get karet because of eating chametz on Pesach, he's going to be exempt of monetary compensation. Second opinion. Yeah, second one. Richard, keep your fingers on there. Yeah. Number 2. Rav Yosef Omer, right? Bepodin et kodashim la'achila leklavim kamipalgeh. Really, be'emet, the machlokot tanaim is to do with, are you allowed to give to the dogs, right, the kodashim, right? Which means like this, right? We have food of Ekdesh that you cannot redeem it for eating it. So this is your case, who you just asked before, because here you can't redeem it anymore. It already became chametz shavat Pesach. So therefore, you can't redeem it anymore. So now the question is, can I redeem it for another thing? For example, to give it to the dogs. Can I now redeem this Ekdesh to give it to the dogs or not? So Rav Yosef comes and he says that even though chametz Pesach is a sur bana'ah, right? It says over here, and if you're going to eat it, for sure it's milah, and even according to Rabbi Shimon, he comes and he says that after Pesach you could redeem it to eat it. Nevertheless, within Pesach, there's no monetary value. Okay, so he says, now he comes like this. Man Amar Ma'al, so according to the Man Amar that says that there was a milah problem, which that's the Tanakama, Kasavar, he holds, you're allowed to redeem kodashim. So this is the case of chametz shavat Pesach, which is Hekdesh. Hekdesh means it was consecrated to the Bet HaMikdash. It belongs to Hekdesh. Now what happens? It was chametz shavat Pesach. So therefore, you're allowed to redeem it in order to give it to the dogs to eat. So according to Shitat Rabbi Yosef Galilei, chametz bepesach is mutar mana. So therefore, if you're allowed to benefit from it, you redeem it, right? And then you give it to the dogs, right? You yourself, you're never allowed to eat it, but you're allowed to give it to the dogs. So therefore, it's milah. However, though, according to the Mandamar that says that there is no milah, he holds en podin. You're not allowed to do such a thing. So it comes out that the chametz has no value because right now on Pesach, what can you do with it? Nothing. You can't even redeem it to give it to the dogs. You can't eat it. You can't benefit from it. It's worthless. So if it's worthless, there's no milah. So that's the second explanation how to explain the machloke between the Tanakama and the Yesh Omrim. So who is this Yesh Omrim? It says here Rabbi Yosef Galilei, which is basically the Tanakama, right? And then Mandamar Lomal, right, is Empodin. It doesn't say who this is. 19. Masechet Pesahim. It doesn't say who it is, but it's basically two different Mandamars. Okay, fine. There's huge footnotes here, but I still can't find the name. He just says it's Machloke Masechet Pesahim. Okay, fine. Next, third opinion. He's going to bring another Girsa of Rav Yosef, right? Rav Acha bar Rava Tanala, right? Now we're on Kaftet Amubet. So Rav Acha bar Rava came and he taught it, right?
Different version.
A different version is Kaftet Amubet 29b. Lehashmata, to this Braita Mishmed Rav Yosef by Lishna, the name of Rav Yosef in a different lashon, in a different version, which in a different language, which means that which we just brought down now, Rav Yosef Amar, it's another version in Rav Yosef. Okay, and what does he say? The Chule Alma, right? That according to everybody, nobody, meaning according to everybody, it doesn't exist to start redeeming it. That's to give to the dogs, saying, well, look at this disgraceful. What is this? For sure not. So what is the machloket then between the Tanakama and the Yesh Omrim? Do we say that something that causes money is considered money or not?
Something that could eventually lead to money.
Lead to money. So for example, by the way, you should know, this is a famous concept to do with selling chametz with a check. I once made the mistake, and that's why I went afterwards and I wanted to find out, right? I thought that you could sell chametz with a check. Why? A check is money. There are some shitot, and that's why obviously when we're selling chametz, we always try to do the most stringent of all the shitot. So what do we try to do? We try to do the most stringent of shitot that you can't use anything which causes money. It has to be real money. So I thought, if you're going to sell chametz to a goy, what should you do? Even if he's going to give you a check, but if you give a check with a very high monetary amount, that's much better than just using cash, but a much lower amount. But according to halacha, it's the opposite. Using cash is real money. A check causes money.
Same thing with Choshen Mishpat, by
exactly. Choshen Mishpat is the exact same thing. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about whether I brought it for selling chametz was the most practical, but the same thing with Choshen Mishpat. Somebody that gives a check, right? For example, there was a whole question that happened. There was a very, very wealthy person. I think it happened, I don't remember if it was in England or in America. Very, very, very wealthy millionaire. On Purim, he used to give out millions and millions of dollars. Mamash, money galore. What happened was on Purim, he comes and he was giving out money. The next day on Purim day, he passes away. Now, obviously, nobody cashed a check the same night. You understand? They all received it on Purim night. And the next morning, mamash, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, boom, passed away. So now the question is, can they cash a check or not?
No question.
Right? Why? Because if he gave them cash, so cash is cash. That's money. A check is an obligation to give money. The check itself is not money. Maybe in Israel, it is money. Why? Because in Israel, right, everyone they pass on checks. You understand? And until you write on the top "Lamutab bilvad," which means the only to the person. In America, it doesn't exist. Meaning, if I write a check to my name, I cannot give it to Baba Khaki here, and he's going to go to the bank and cash it in if I sign at the back as well. It doesn't exist.
Used to be able to do that, not anymore.
Okay. I used to do that here also as well. How many years ago?
Endorse it over,
but many years ago. No, as long as I'm here, I don't remember nothing.
No, you can endorse it.
They don't like it. They don't like it.
Yeah.
You have an officer.
But anyway, a check is not money.
Exactly, but the check in itself is not money.
You might have fun, you might not have fun.
Yeah, exactly. You put it in, there's nothing there. It's not a cashier check. A cashier check is something different, right? Because there, the money is already here, meaning everything's here. That's something different.
It's fraudulent.
Yeah. Okay, well,
now with laser printers, you can make cashiers.
Okay, but that's a concept. So it says here, it's something which is davara gorem lemamon.
You can hack it.
You can also hack it. Okay, you can hack it as well. So it says here like this. So kasavar, so it says like this. Manda Amar, according to the Manda Amar, that he says that there is a problem of mila. Kasavar, he holds davara gorem lemamon kemamon dami. What does that mean? If it could cause money, which means that you can wait until after Pesach and then you redeem it. So it's money also here. So to here, right now, is there monetary value to this chametz? The answer is no. But after Pesach, there is a value to it. So just like there's a value after Pesach, right now, this is causing money. So something that causes money is considered money. So therefore, it's mi'ilah right now, even though right now there's no value to it. But according to the mandama that says it's not mi'ilah, he holds the something which causes money is not considered money, and therefore there's no problem of mi'ilah. Okay? Next. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar. Rav Acha bar Yaakov comes and he says another version now, another explanation. According to everybody, that something which causes money is considered money. That means according to everybody, something which causes money is considered money. But here it's a plukta Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Shimon kamipalge. It's a machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Right? What's exactly the machloket? If chametz shavat of Pesach is asur b'ana or not? If chametz which passes off on Pesach is considered prohibited in ana or not? Manda amar lo ma'al. According to the manda that says it's not considered milah, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. He holds like Rabbi Yehuda that he says the chametz shavat of a Pesach, right, which is asur, and therefore he says that's why there's no value right now. Umanda amar, and therefore there's no problem of milah. Umanda amar, but according to the manda amar that says there is milah, he holds like Rabbi Shimon the chametz shavat of Pesach is actually permitted, and it was only a knas, it was only like a penalty. Okay, so therefore since it was only a penalty, that's why we said that it's only going to be considered a penalty to that which we said that again it's a penalty. Whichever one it is, again, remember it's a sur. The only question is it biblical or is it just a penalty? Okay. Next. So says the Gemara. One second. Let's hold our horses, even though the answer is going to be very simple, because we already brought down the answer. But he says, let's hold our horses. You just told me that Rav Acha bar Yaakov learns in Shitat Rabbi Yehuda that the seor of achila, you learn it from seor of reiyah. Remember, let's do a chazara. Seor of achila, learning it from reiyah means, according to the Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, you learn chametz shaval of Pesach, you're not allowed to eat it from, right? Velo yachel chametz, you're not allowed to eat chametz. That's biblical. However, though, if you learn achila from reiyah, just like reiyah, velo yira'eh lecha seor, velo reiyah, you're not allowed to see your own, right? Yeah, well, seor is leaven, but you're not allowed to see your own leaven. But you're allowed to see the goy's leaven, or you're allowed to see the ekdesh's leaven. So if you're allowed to do that, if you learn seor of achila from seor of riyah, so then what's going to happen? So then according to that, you're allowed to benefit from a goy's chametz. You're only not allowed to benefit from a Jew's chametz, but you're allowed to benefit from a goy's chametz. So therefore, if Rav Acha bar Yaakov comes and he says you're allowed to benefit from a goy's chametz, so what is this explanation of Rav Acha bar Yaakov then? That he says that something which causes money doesn't cause money. What's going on here? For sure, it should be permitted. Why? Because at the end of the day, you're allowed to benefit from Ekdesh after Pesach. So answers the Gemara, that we just said before, on the previous page. That was the last thing that we said. We said Rav Acha bar Yaakov retracted. And he actually says that according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's going to be a sur even of a goy and even of Ekdesh, right? So whether it's on Pesach or afterwards as well. Okay? Now we're going to the last explanation, the fifth explanation. So until here, how many do we have? We had 5 explanations. So we had Rabbi Yochanan, we had Rav Yosef, second version of Rav Yosef, correct? That was Rav Acha bar Rava in Rav Yosef, right? Rav Acha bar Yaakov, and now the last one is Rav Ashi, exactly. Because the previous one was Rav Acha bar Rava, and this is Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Okay, so now Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi is the fifth explanation on who is the Yeshomrim in the Tanna Kama. Rav Ashi says, according to everybody, in Podin, you're not allowed to redeem Hekdesh to give it to the dogs. And also, according to everybody, the Vara Gorim Lemon is not considered money. Wow. Because Rav Acha bar Yaakov said that it is considered money. Right. Now Rav Ashi is saying it's not considered money. So according to everybody, you could, what? It's not considered money. So since it's not considered money, right? So therefore, according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, for sure it has no value of money. So then if it has no value of money, so why is there a problem with Milah? But here the machlok is between Rabbi Yosef and the rabbis. According to the Mandamar that it says that it's Milah, he holds like Rabbi Yosef that chametz is mutar bana even on Pesach.
Who's chametz?
Chametz of, it sounds like everybody. Yeah, it sounds like everybody. It doesn't say here, but it sounds like everybody. Yeah, I'm reading it, but I can't see anything so quickly. Hold on a second. Yeah, it sounds like everybody's chametz. You're allowed to redeem it, which means that it's mutar bana'ah on Pesach in itself. So therefore, it does have some value. Now, obviously, you're not allowed to eat it, but you would be able to redeem it and sell it to a goy, right? So it says over here, it's mutar liftoto. You're allowed to redeem it in order to put it underneath the fire. Umanda amar lo ma'ala, but according to the Mandamar, it says you're not allowed to do meila. Sorry, they're not allowed to. There's no meila here. He holds like the Rabbanan, which means chametz and Pesach is a sur bana'ah, and therefore you're not allowed to benefit, right, during the time of burning it. So if so, en lechametz of ekdesh shum shuyu. So therefore there's no value to it on Pesach. So that's a machloke between them. Okay. So now we're going to go back to the concept of chametz that gets mixed up with other foods. Are you allowed to benefit from it or not? Okay. So basically, that was the fifth explanation of whether there is a problem of milah or not. That was a machloket. Okay, that was a machloket between Tanakama and Yeshomrim.
On Monday to give it over.
Yeah, exactly. The 5 opinions. Okay, very good. Okay, fine. Next, Amar Rav says, chametz bizmano. When you have chametz during the proper time, meaning on Pesach itself, and it gets mixed up. Bem emino, bem shalom emino. It doesn't matter whether it gets mixed up with another type of a chametz, whether it means the same species or a different species. Asur. It's going to be asur. Why? Because it's not batel berov, right? We don't say batel berov on Pesach. Shelo bizmano. If it wasn't on the proper time, which means it wasn't on the time of Pesach, but rather it was after Pesach. So then it all depends. If it's going to be mim mimino, it's asur. If it's the same species, it's going to be prohibited. But if it's going to be not the same species, it's going to be permitted. Why? Because I said batel berov. Okay. So says the Gemara, what are we dealing with exactly? If you're going to tell me now that we're talking about that it's going to give a certain type of a taste, so then he comes and he says, right, as follows. So he says, if it's going to be that it's going to give a certain taste, so he says like this, he says, shelo bizmano, shelo b'mino mutar. So he says, one second, if you're going to tell me that if it's not on the proper time, which means it's after Pesach, and it's not the same species, it's going to be permitted? But one second, it gives taste. Hayav tama, it gives taste. Ela b'mashu. But rather, it has to be that it got mixed up a little bit, which means it was such a small amount that it doesn't even give taste. So since it doesn't give taste, that's why it's going to be okay. Okay? Very good. So now, chametz bizmano, now that we just mentioned this, chametz, if it's going to be on Pesach, whether it was min mimino, min shenomino, which means with the same species or a different species, it's going to be asur. Rav letame, Rav goes according to his reasoning. The Rav Shmuel Damitar was both of them say, because according to right, Rav and Shmuel, they both say any type of an isur in the Torah, if it gets up with the same species, it's a little bit. It's going to be osir with a little bit, right? So he says,
What's a little bit? Is it osir or not?
it's osir afilu b'mashu. A minute amount, the smallest amount is going to be prohibited. However, though shelo b'mino, if it's not going to be the same species, benoten tam, it has to give taste. And that's why we always speak about the concept of 60, because after 60, for sure there's no taste. Many times Shulchan Aruch is more lenient that even if there's taste, if there's no taste less than 60, we're also lenient. You understand? But then we would have to be so kfela. Kfela means we give it to a goyish, kfela goy, like
anybody could be an expert for a Spartan, right? You just say, hey, taste this.
No, not everybody. It has to be a kfela. Kfela arma means somebody that's a chef, somebody that knows. You understand? Not just some goy.
The Spartan were more lenient.
No, we're more lenient that we rely upon them, but it's good because Ashkenazim never rely on kfela. They always say 60. 60 is 60.
Rabbi, what is less than 60? I don't understand.
You need 60 times, and then it's permitted. Oh. So for example, let's say, right, the Goya came and she poured a little bit of milk into the adafina.
Okay.
Yeah? So therefore, if you have 60 times the adafina more than the milk, so then you're allowed to eat the adafina.
The whole thing is kosher.
The whole thing is kosher. Okay. You're allowed to eat the entire thing. Okay. Obviously, you can't see the milk, because if you see the isur, you have to take out the isur. But let's say it got mixed up that you can't see it. In a sense, you're allowed to eat the entire thing. But that's 60 times to be mevatel, to annul it. Right, it was 60 times of the volume. Yeah.
That whole true with pig.
Thank you.
Also the exact same thing. Any kol isurin shabbat Torah. It said any isurin of the Torah, anything, even of pig that fell inside, non-kosher meat fell inside. No, the exact same thing. Okay. So it says here benoten tam. Rav gazar chametz bizmano shelo bemino, atu bemino. Right. So basically, Rav came and he made a gezerah. What was the gezerah of Rav? Rav comes and he said that it's going to be asur b'mashu by chametz shelo bemino. So he went and he said, chametz bizmano, which means chametz on Pesach itself. He made a decree, shelo b'mino, that it's going to be asur b'mashu, just like b'mino. Which means, if it's min b'mino, it's always mashu. It's any amount. Why? It's very, very simple. Because if it's any single amount, it's always the same taste. So you're just strengthening the taste. Imagine right now you have, right, kosher meat and non-kosher meat, but they're the exact same cow's meat. Just one was a nevela, meaning one had shechita to it and one didn't. When you put them all together and you cook them all together, it's the same taste. So there's no annulling. It's all the exact same. So therefore, mashu, even a small amount, is going to prohibit it. If it's a different concept, so that taste already was annulled. If somebody's going to ask you, what do you taste? It's completely annulled. There's nothing here. You're eating. Yeah, but you don't taste anything. There's nothing there. So that's why it's annulled. So here comes Rav, and he says, I'm going to make a decree. I'm going to make a decree, min shelo bemino, which means not in the same species, because of the same species. Yeah, chicken with meat is not the same species, right? Because of the same species. Meaning, min bemino, the same species is going to be asur b'mashu with any amount. So too, min shelo bemino is also going to be asur b'mashu. V'shelo bizmano, if it's not the time of Pesach, bemino is going to be asur, like Rabbi Yehuda. Even mashu is going to be asur like Rabbi Yehuda, because he says the chametz shaval of Pesach is asur min Torah. The shelo b'mino, but if it's not going to be the same species, it's going to be mutar. Why? The shelo bizmano, the shelo b'mino, atu mino, kule haylo gozim. We're not going to make two decrees. Meaning, we're not going to make a decree of shelo bizmano because of exactly one decree and another decree. First of all, there's like two decrees here. One of them is shelo bizmano for bizmano. Shelo bizmano means after Pesach. For bizmano, which is on Pesach. Plus shelo b'mino because of mino. It's too many decrees, meaning we're not going to make two different decrees here. It's like a decree and a no, it's too much. So because of that, we don't do that. You understand? So it's too many decrees. One decree was after Pesach because of Pesach, and second decree was shelo b'mino because of mino, not the same species because of the same species. That's too many decrees. So we didn't do that. Okay? Shmuel Amar, and Shmuel is now going to come and say, chametz bizmano, if it's chametz on Pesach itself, min b'mino is going to be asur. Shelo b'mino is going to be mutar. It's going to be mutar, which means it's not going to be asur. It's going to be mutar. Shelo bizmano, if it's going to be after Pesach, ben mino and shelo mino, it's mutar. It's always going to be mutar, whether it's the same species or not the same species. Okay, so now we're going to try to explain why does Shmuel say this. So chametz bizmano, it says over here, right? It says like this. Yeah, he comes and he says chametz bizmano, right? Bemino asur. Yeah, it says.
You should caution the people listening to this that the rules regarding Pesach are much stricter than regular rules about, nullifying and things like that.
That what? That the laws on Pesach itself is much stricter.
In other words, the chametz.
Yes, because chametz, remember, is asur afilu b'mashu. B'mashu means even in a small, minute amount. In the other Yisurim Shel Torah, you have the batel v'shishim. You have 60 times against it. Here, there's no such thing. Here, you have a drop of chametz falling into Pesach. There's nothing to talk about. There was a famous chef. Yeah, that he was in a hotel, and they only found out towards the end, right, that the pastries, right, were incredible, and they didn't know why it was so good. They said this hotel, we're gonna have to come back every single year. The best pastry. Finally, the mashkiach, he caught on. He said, "There's something weird here. There's something wrong. It's impossible. It tastes mamash like chametz pastries." But they went. He was looking in the entire kitchen, a back, a forth, but the kosher kitchen was kosher. So finally, he went, right, and he put a spy. Right? What happened? The chef was going to the non-kosher kitchen, bringing the whiskey, putting into the pastries, right, and then taking it back. Yeah, and he had the spy. He caught him for Pesach. Yes. It was on Pesach. On Pesach. Yeah, no, whiskey is normally okay, but he was on Pesach. Yeah, and therefore even if it's first of all, there for sure was to give taste. So then nothing we'll talk about. But even if you're going to tell me it's such a small amount. Any amount, it's not batil. That's it. You had it, the entire thing. So imagine. So they were all eating chametz on Pesach during the entire. They only found out, I think, it was the second last day.
They were putting crumbs, breadcrumbs.
Breadcrumbs.
So they came to him. What are you doing? This is not kosher for Pesach. I said, how would you eat this food without breadcrumbs?
That's it. You understand what you want?
Hotel, 5-star.
No, but it's a problem. It's a very, very big problem.
That's why you
Pesach
don't go
hotels
out.
is.
That's why you don't go out.
Yeah, mamash. It's okay, fine. So now it says over here. So one more time, it says chametz bizmano b'mino asur. So Shmuel goes according to his reasoning. The Rabbi Shmuel says Rabbi Shmuel according to both say. Kol yisurin sheba Torah, any yisurin in the Torah b'mino, if it's the same species, asurim b'mashu. It's going to be asur with a small amount, right? With any amount. Shelo b'mino, if it's not the same species, noten tam, it's giving taste. Shelo b'minan atuminan lo gazar, but shelo b'minan atuminan, meaning we don't make a decree not on the same species because of the same species. Shelo bizmano, and if it's not at the same time, beminam shelo b'minan mutarin. It's always going to be permitted. Meaning, if it's not, no, for the first one, shelo b'minan. The first one, shelo b'minan, is that if it's not the same species, we don't do it for the same species. Right. We don't make a decree. Second thing, shelo bizmano, not in the time of Pesach, ben b'minan and shelo b'minan is always going to be mutarin. Which means if it's after Pesach, you're allowed to come and benefit, whether it gets mixed up with the same species or not the same species, it's always going to be permitted. Like Rabbi Shimon, just like Rabbi Shimon, that he says the Chametz Shavral of Pesach is not biblical prohibition. It's only, exactly, it's not a biblical prohibition, it's only going to be rabbinical, right? Or because of a knas. So Rabbi Yochanan comes and he says a third shita. Rabbi Yochanan says, Chametz bizmano, Chametz, which is on the proper time, right? He comes and he says, right? Kol isurin, right? He says, Bemino Meshalom Mino. Right, asur benoten tam. So basically, Rabbi Yochanan, which that's how we're actually going to come and say, right, that basically bizmano during the time, whether it's mino or shalom mino, it's always asur benoten tam.
It says it's forbidden only if it's sufficient to.
If it gives taste, yes, if it gives taste. Shelo bizmano, right, if it's not on the time, meaning after Pesach, ben minam and shalom minan mutar, it's going to be permitted. So now we're going to explain Rabbi Yochanan. Chametz bizmano ben minam shalom minam chametz on Pesach, whether it's the same species or not, is always with giving taste. Rabbi Yochanan Tameh, Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his reasoning. Rabbi Yochanan Shakish, but Rabbi Yochanan Shakish will say, all the Yisurim of Torah, Beminam Shalom Minam Benoten Tam, it's always Benoten Tam, right? Which means that always it's going to be giving taste. It has to give a taste. If it doesn't give a taste, there's no problem whatsoever. Shelo bizmano, if it's not going to be bizmano, ben b'mino Shalom Minam, whether it was in the same species or not the same species, mutarin is going to be permitted, like Rabbi Shimon. And Rava says, we're almost 1 second. Rava says, Hilchata da halacha is chametz bizmano, whether it's b'mino or shalom mino is asur b'mashu. So that's halacha l'maseh, by the way. Whether it's the same species or not, asur b'mashu, like Rav. Shelo bizmano after Pesach, ben b'mino or shalom mino, whether it's the same species or not, it's going to be mutar like Rabbi Shimon. And we finish the daf of today. Have a nice